Going to be eating a shock dart, but he's able to makes it
win anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won.
Strap yourselves in, it's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome back to another episode of Press Forward to Defuse, your weekly source of Valorant news and discussion. I'm Nauri, or Sam. I'm going to be hosting today because, as you can see, Mike's not here. He's off doing some other game. I don't know. So it's just going to be Paul and I this week. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm missing Mike already. I can't believe that we only got like the full team back together for like a week. Before one of you had to go off somewhere else. I'll hold down the fort as usual, though. No worries.
Somehow, as the newest addition, you are the most consistent out of all of us. So, you know,
and,
big ups for that.
Isn't that new at this point? It has been like 8 months, right? So,
fair.
You know.
Well, relatively speaking, all right, newest. All right, guys, we have got so much stuff happening this week. There have been some huge Game Changers announcements. Playoffs are around the corner. We got Nursery Gamer LANs coming in, happening as well. So there's a lot to dive into. So let's just do it. We're going to dive into our Run It Back, which is brought to you by Temple University. And speaking of Game Changers, our very first LAN event for Game Changers is happening in Berlin. I am so stoked about this. One thing, only 8 teams seems a little odd. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, the 8-team number is a little bit weird. I remember seeing a tweet from Net when this was announced, and he was like, I think Game Changers should have 12. 12 has been really good for like the regular pro scene, so it seems odd that it's not 12, but I mean, it's really cool to have a big LAN, right? Massive. It'll since it's in Berlin, I imagine it's going to be like at the LEC studio, like the other Berlin events have been for Valorant, right? It's November 15th to 20th, so it's in that like slot after Champions too, so it's not like competing with any of the other big events at the same time. It's going to be awesome, even though it's just 8 teams.
Yeah, I can't wait. The only thing that makes me really sad about the whole 8-team thing is obviously when you look at how many slots each region got. You know, NA and EMEA, obviously, we get the better end of the stick. We get 2 slots each. And I mean, even for us to look at all of our teams and just go, who's going to be the best to represent us? I cannot even imagine what the other regions are feeling coming into this one. It's going to be an all-out dogfight, I think. But this is really, really exciting. Of course, very, very first international LAN for the women's scene. We had Game Changers all through last year. It was a huge success. I know that EMEA had like almost 1,000 players or something, like hundreds of teams, you know, sign
Sure.
up. There's so much. It's probably one of the most supported women's scenes in esports at the moment. So it's really great. And now in our second year,
I
we
cannot
already
think of
have-
one that contests it. I cannot. I mean,
Valid.
I don't claim to know every scene for every esport, but I can't think of another esport that has as a women's scene that flourishes as well as Valorant does, is as supportive as Valorant is.
Yeah, I know that like CS is getting there. They've just had their ESL Impact. They had their LAN in Dallas, and there was also like 6-8 teams somewhere thereabouts. So seems to be the standard at the moment. But hopefully we'll smash that. Also, guys, if I suddenly freeze or like Mr. Robot, I'm on a farm.
Gotta
in
make
the
sure the
middle of
cow didn't
Africa.
chew through the Ethernet cord.
Oh, God, please. Well, we don't have Ethernet. We use satellite internet because fiber doesn't reach the farm.
Gotta make sure the cow didn't tackle the satellite dit. Yeah, it doesn't quite work as well.
That would be impressive. But anyway, yeah. So if that does happen, please do bear with me. All right, let's move along to our next topic. We're going to be sticking in the women's sphere for the moment. C9 White have just gotten a new coach. Zotek, I'm guessing? Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. Zotek, previous coach of Sonics, right? Team in like tier 2 NA. An interesting pickup, but I don't think a bad one. Zotek's not necessarily a coach that like stands out in my mind as like an unbelievably exciting pickup, but I think considering how well C9 has been doing as of late, they would only make this addition if they were super confident that Zotek's going to be adding a lot to this team, right? Otherwise, they probably wouldn't screw with the formula. C9 White has hardly had any struggles staying on top of the NA Game Changers scene, so I'm interested to see what he brings to the table.
I do find it very funny that as I talk about my internet doing funny things, my internet does a funny thing. So here's my one thing. I think that like this could be not a fear, but if you look at what happened with Sentinels, for example, and they will be an example for the rest of time, they were dominating for quite a long time. Maybe not as long as C9 White have been dominating the women's scene, but they dominated for a long time. And maybe they got a little overconfident, you know, didn't realize how well other teams were doing. Or maybe they did realize and they just thought, well, you know, we'll be fine. We're really good. Made any attempt to bring on something, a coach or whatever that would help them stay on top of their game. And C9 White obviously don't want to go down that same path. So I think this is a great idea. Bring in a big brain. Hopefully he's got a big enough brain to, you know, keep that team on top, which is, of course, their goal. And everybody else is trying to knock them down a peg. But overall, I'm excited to see how this pans out. Let's head on over to our next little bit of news across the pond. Well, yeah, it's still across for me. I'm in South Africa. Alliance Coven have finally fleshed out their roster again. They were playing in the previous Game Changers with one of these players, Kuripuya. And they were playing with Dana, who has historically been on this roster for a long time, the old chat band roster, for quite some time. Dana has now left. Kuripuya has become a staple. She's actually from the old Footballist roster, and Footballist is just recently disbanded, which was really, really sad to see. But it's a great opportunity for her. They've also done this. I don't believe this has been announced anywhere, or I might have just missed it, but they also have Spadoka on the team at the moment. And she's also one of those like players that goes way back to the old chat band roster. Her and Mary, who has just joined G2, they left Valorant, left chat band at the exact same time. They were like, cool, we're retiring. And now they've come back on these respective powerhouse rosters. The big question mark here for me is Jelena. We've only really seen her perform once, and they did very well. They took a map off of Alliance Coven in the last Game Changers. They got quite far in the bracket as well, but unfortunately didn't quite make it into that one of those top spots. But she's clearly impressed someone in the time that they played against Alliance. So I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, how she slots into the roster along with Kuripuya. I don't know if you had any thoughts on this one, Paul.
No, I mean, these aren't two players I'm super familiar with. I remember seeing Kuripuya a little bit when I've been able to like tune in depth to the EMEA Game Changers scene. So definitely excited to see how it is. Alliance Coven, obviously a pretty good org in general in EMEA Game Changers. So this should be interesting.
Yeah, and this is we're going to chat about this a little bit later on, but this is really important for them because they kind of bombed out in the first Game Changers, and in the second one they managed to do well, but they're still a little ways off from any potential LAN spots, so it's really important for them to do well. But we'll get to that in a bit. In the meantime, we'll move on over. There's a new challenger in the North American women's scene. Now, you should recognize a lot of these names if you've been following along the scene, and we actually spoke about Native last week. We were like Native Black, and we were like, does that mean they have a women's team? Yeah, they do. Native White,
they evidently do,
and it's this team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a super cool roster too, right? I mean, this feels like a lot of the best pieces that have sort of slipped through some of the other like women's teams in NA that have like shown up for a little bit and had like some success, but then get disbanded, or there's like, you know, some sort of internal issue or something. It's super cool to see this, and they're already doing super well. They already won like Sakura Cup, which had a lot of really good teams in it. Misfits Black, Version X, right? This is gonna be a team I'm keeping my eye on, Sam.
Yeah, and you talk about Misfits, and like I saw Maddie, who was also obviously on this team for quite some time. She had tweeted, and she's like, "Thanks for the opportunity, Misfits," and that leaves a little bit of a worrying thought to me. You know, we spoke a little bit about Chloe as well, who's now doing socials for CLG. So, like, is she still part of Misfits? Is she not Misfits? There's some big question marks around that roster. But this Native Gaming roster is looking really good. Of course, big fan of Arianicus, so happy to see her getting another shot at it. And hopefully she's going to
Arianicus
really
is just so fun for the scene. She shit talks so much on Twitter. It's so funny to watch her in a just play in a tournament ever. Like it's so fun.
I will say that, like, so there's been a lot of talk, and I mean, I've even spoken to her at some point, and I was like, you got to learn when to back down, right? Like, there's a point where it becomes a little detrimental. And I think that it has had moments where it's kind of backfired. We want the banter, but there's definitely a line. So hopefully that gets itself sorted out. I mean, she's an incredible woman, so I think with a little bit of time, she'll get that ironed out pretty easily. And yeah, on another phenomenal team. She always winds up on these great teams. She was on that 1994 Super Toyota team, and they were also doing it was like the best name ever. Yeah. And they were also doing really well, but you know, free agent teams, it's the nature of the beast. So unfortunately, didn't really get terribly far there. But here we go, new opportunities arise. Keeping in the women's vein,
we have so much Game Changers news this week. It's great.
Well, I mean, there's so much Game Changers happening, so it's really exciting to see that we have so much to talk about for a change. But this is also some sad news. TSM have now dropped Leah from their roster. And again, you know, a couple of question marks there. Of course, TSM played in the most recent Sakura Cup as well, and also didn't quite get the results that they had wanted. So changes are necessary, but it is sad to see Leah go. She's one of those like original members. Got a bit of a soft spot for original members. I don't know.
And she was, I mean, she's already looking at other teams, right? Like I know in Sakura Cup, I think she played with, was it Elysium Rose? Yeah, Elysium Rose. So like, she's a great player. I doubt she's going to struggle too much to find a home somewhere at the very least. And who was TSM trialing in the meantime? Bungie, who is a player I'm not super familiar with, but did pretty all right picking up the chamber. Oh, played on CLG Red. That's right. That's
there you go. Yeah. I thought it sounded familiar, and I was like,
I should have remembered that one off the top of my head. I should have known that one. But yeah, interesting move. We'll see how it pans out. TSMX didn't do phenomenal, but they also, it was like single bracket elim, and they got matched up against Misfits in like second round, and Misfits almost ran the gauntlet. So, you know, we don't fault them too much for that.
Yeah, a bit of a rough spot to be in, no doubt. All right, let's head over back into the main VCT scene. A little bit of a weird interaction on Twitter recently. So Tanisk, who is the head coach of Vitality, has just been benched. And there's a lot of question marks around what actually happened here. So and I know that, Paul, you didn't really have a ton of the information, so I'm just going to give a full rundown.
All the info's in French. I couldn't find anything in English.
Well, there you go. And Google Translate is a pain in the ass. All right. So basically, there is a LAN event happening in France. But as I understand it, there's only going to be like one team that's actually on LAN. and the rest of the teams are not. And Tanny made a tweet about it, and he was like, we're not going to be on LAN, so how's this going to work? You know, what is the situation? And as I understand it, it's only Common Core, if I'm saying that right, that's going to be at the LAN themselves, like actually on LAN. They're the one team, if I've understood it correctly. So Tanny made this tweet. He's like, so how does this work? What's going to happen? And from what I understand, or from what I remember, one of the players from KC got kind of feathers ruffled and was saying, well, why are you just complaining about the event? You know, why don't you like talk to actual people that blah, blah, why are you blasting us on Twitter or whatever? And Tanny was like, okay, first of all, dude, I'm letting people know that we're not going to be playing on LAN. And here's where the interesting stuff comes in. He said, second of all, stay out of my mentions. All of your racist remarks about Indians should leave, or you're a disgrace to KC. And again, all he's done is call out somebody for, well, he's accused him of racist comments. I say all he's done. I mean, that can be a pretty big thing, but does it warrant benching? And then as you go further down into the announcement, they say, we're clearly seeing how excessive toxicity targeted at individuals can eventually trigger the wrong response. Pressure is high on professional players and staff, and what may look like humor for most can be received as a personal offense by someone. And if you look at Tanny, you can see his dissent. And so it almost feels like Vitality are like backing this player as if like, oh, he wasn't being racist, he was just trying to be humorous or whatever, which is like a big red flag if that is the case. Now, I may have misunderstood this. So if I am wrong, please do correct me. I don't want to give misinformation, but that's what it seems like, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need for like a riot and other party investigation if it's just super obvious that this, like, the player accused of racism is actually being incredibly racist, right? So there's obviously some very big gray areas here that I personally don't have enough information for. It also seems like, based on the Vitality, like that was a big long block of text, right? And in it they like mentioned like the pressures on like professional like players and staff. So I wonder if something else has been going on behind the scenes too, that has like kind of led to this that we're not fully informed about, and Vitality feels like they're trying to get like ahead of something else. Maybe I don't know. It feels like a very odd situation. Hopefully we'll get more news on that as it develops.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult when we don't have as much context as we would like. And it's probably for the best that not everything is being aired on social media, because we know how detrimental that can be. But at the same time, it does make it very difficult to like follow the threads. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more information on that as things go on. All right, now some more exciting news, a little bit more on the casual base for the moment. And of course, that is Act 5 coming to Valorant very, very soon. As you can see there's a nice little itinerary rundown of what's going to be happening tomorrow. So they're going to have the trailer for the event. There's going to be a dev live stream. I know they said that Riv is going to be, Rivington III, he's going to be hosting, narrating, whatever you want to call it, doing the voiceovers, whatever it is. Then they're going to discuss the patch notes, and there's community live gameplay. And we know that there are some big streamers that are getting involved in this. Average Jonas tweeted about it. There's been a few streamers that have said, hey, we're going to be live playtesting the new map. Come check it out. New map, incidentally, is called Pearl, which is quite exciting. Allegedly. And it seems to be like a... Allegedly, yeah, according to a Valor leaks, who, to be fair, have not been terribly wrong.
I don't think I've seen Valor leaks really miss very often.
Yeah,
so if they say the new map's called Pearl, I'm inclined to believe them.
Inclined to believe, yeah.
Super interesting too, right? There's been a lot of talk in Valorant about like, how is the next map going to work? How is the next map going to work for the pro scene, right? Because we have 7 maps right now, which gives us a very structured pick ban. Introducing an 8th makes things very odd. Some people are like, okay, well, are we going to go back to how it was with 6, where it ends up being like a coin flip for last map, or like who gets to decide it? Are we just going to take a map and put it out of rotation entirely, like this, like quote unquote early into Valorant's life cycle, right? And what map are we going to see potentially leave if that is the case? Are different maps going to have, or different tournaments going to have different map pools, right? New map is going to be super interesting to see. And as always, every single map, whenever it drops in Valorant, everybody is going to hate it for a minute. So I don't know how quickly it even will get added to the competitive rotation, right? I would be surprised if we saw it at Next Masters, but Next Masters also is like, it's like just in that gray area enough to where
we definitely
be
won't.
in time. I don't think we'll see it. Nah.
The thing is, even if it's technically within that like time span of like, okay, now you're allowed to have a map. I mean, we've seen this so many times. New agents, new maps. Riot are like, competitive integrity. We don't want to like throw our teams into the deep end, particularly if you're coming through like LCQ. If you're a team that secured your spot, you have tons of time to learn a new map. If you're a team that's playing in LCQ, you do not have time to learn a new map. So I doubt we'd see it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, as I understand it, LCQ is probably going to be happening after Masters, right? And Masters is
but even
not
then,
till
that's even worse.
What, end of the month? I think is when Masters is. End of the month, beginning.
Okay,
of next?
So then instead of LCQ, it would be like playoffs teams. So playoffs teams will be stuck in like a tough situation, and all the teams that didn't make playoffs are like,
there's no way they're gonna put it in for playoffs, right? But like, when we see this map is going to be a very interesting question, and what the map actually does, because every map has a gimmick, right? Every single map has the like weird, unique thing about it that no other map really has. So, curious to see what Pearl's gimmick is.
I mean, we just had an H shape. I cannot wait to see how much more crazy they can get with that. I also did see in one of the comments, somebody was like, people keep thinking it's a 3-site map. No, it's got 2 sites. So at least we know it's got 2 sites. Not 4, which could have been really, have like Fracture, but with 4 sites.
It's not fun, 1 either. Right? 1 would be funny.
No, that would just be like King of the Hill, and it would be terrible. No, let's not do that. Vietnam flashbacks.
Probably not a good idea. Probably not a good call.
All right, moving along from this, though, here's some more really, really exciting news. We're kind of breezing through stuff because it is just the 2 of us. So, but it is.
We
nice
got a lot to talk about too,
more.
with like later on with VCT and everything. So we gotta.
Oh yeah. So franchising, we've been talking about it for quite some time, and we now know that it's happening. Like this week, teams are putting in their applications. And what I found really interesting, like if you go through the article, one of the things that they mentioned, for example, is like, one of the things is Riot saying, okay, your players need to have salaries of $50,000 your players. And it says in the article that most tier teams or most tier 1 orgs are in the like 10 to 20 plus bracket. So that's quite a jump for a lot of these teams.
Well, so you gotta be careful with how you read that as well, right? Because it's 50,000 per year is the minimum, but in NA, several tier 1 organizations have 10,000 per month. 10 to 20,000 per month per player. So I mean the 50,000 to me is like more of a formality than anything else, right? They want their, like, if you're gonna have a big franchised tier 1, here we are, this is the next biggest esport on the planet kind of league. You can't have professional tier 1 players in like one of the biggest scenes in the world, right? One of the biggest regions in the world, not making a livable salary. So that there's no way that a tier 1 org should be allowed to provide anything less than 50,000. If they're going to be an org that actually is franchised. You have to be able to put up at least enough to have all of your players make a livable wage.
Yeah. And then also, it also brings the question, like, so that's for North America. It makes you wonder, so what is that going to look like for the smaller regions? You know, and when I say smaller, I mean like economically, because not everyone is as strong as the dollar. So it would be absurd to have some teams and you're putting the same limitation on them, because it's just, it's probably just not possible. So that's something to just bear in mind. Of course, that is happening. I'm trying to see if, just to remember if there was anything else like really important. Things that we already knew. So they requested financial details, content plans, you know, how are they going to keep the organization sustainable? How are they going to maintain support for the players, etc., etc. We knew that was happening. And the other thing to note, so obviously, again, we knew America, so North America will encompass LATAM and Brazil, but it's only 8 to 10 teams, which is like really not a lot when you consider how many organizations are in North America alone that could potentially make it into franchising. And it also begs the question, what is going to happen to teams that don't make it into franchising? Do they like fizzle away? Do they try and compete in the smaller tournaments to get to the point where they can compete? Because I believe there were like a few slots open for like actual qualifying. Sure. Like what is the plan going to be? There's a lot of question marks there.
And we do have to remember, for at least this year, it is soft franchising, right? Quote unquote. These aren't necessarily the teams that we're going to see forever and always in Val. I mean, a lot of them are going to be. But it's not necessarily a full lockout. It just probably really hurts to not get one of the soft franchise spots for 2023. So I hope we don't see teams like just pull an LG, right? With, it doesn't look like we're going to get franchise spots. Goodbye, team. Have fun in the void, right? I mean, LG admittedly hasn't been like that rude to their players or anything like that. But that sort of thing, right? Where the second anything looks like it's going to go wrong, abandon ship. I hope we don't see that. We will also know within reportedly any time between like the next month to 6 weeks what teams, or well, the teams will at least be informed if they're moving on into the next stage of the process. So seems like we're getting through this real quick, right? There's going to be at least a decent amount of time between when this is all finalized and next year to sort of figure out what your plan is as an individual team and how much you want to stick around in Valorant.
The one thing that does make me like super happy from this article and has nothing to do with franchising is that the Luminosity roster are apparently currently in talks with another organization. So it doesn't look like they're going to be split up and sent into the ether. They might actually be able to maintain as a solid roster. So that's really exciting if it does actually manage to pan out.
That'd be good.
So that's our run it back, done and dusted. But speaking of game changes, so we're not going to head too far away from that just yet. The stakes are seriously rising for these teams, especially if you look at EMEA, for an example. We've already had 2 of our Game Changers events. We're heading into our 3rd Game Changer. So a lot of points, you basically running out of opportunities here. And if you look at your top 2 teams, it's fairly close. Obviously, G2 have won the last 2, so they're sitting really pretty there with their points. Guild X have come 2nd place in I think they came 2nd in the 2nd one, maybe 3rd in the one before, or 2nd in both. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, they've been performing incredibly well, so they're also up there. But there are still opportunities for some of these other teams to make a bit of a comeback. The big question mark I have is if you look over on the right side of the screen there, and it shows Series 1 points, Series 2 points, Series 3, 1st place, it's got the champion symbol. And I'm wondering, I think that's an automatic place, I'm not mistaken. Yeah, automatic qualification. So, and I mean,
that's what you would want, right? Your most recent winner to actually make the international tournament. That seems ideal.
But it's going to be interesting because, okay, so there's like a 99% chance that goes to G2, which means what, the 2nd placing in points, so there won't be like a 3rd, it'll just be like whoever's in the 2nd place in points.
It's interesting. It doesn't seem like there's like a last chance qualifier or anything like that. And the point spreads aren't like that massive, right? Between like 1st and 2nd place in each tournament, between each tournament in and of itself. So there's a real possibility that like a team like Guild X, who has a decent lead, maybe, let's say, in a hypothetical, Guild X kind of flubs the 3rd series, but they get like 6th or 8th or something. And then they just have the most points compared to everyone else except G2 who's qualified, right? So they just make it through even if they aren't necessarily the most competitive, which seems a little bit odd to me.
But given how close a lot of these points are, I mean, if Rix wins, then even if Guild gets their 50 points,
Rix I mean, it is tight knit.
Pip them. Yeah, I mean, it's really, really close. So there's a lot here, and we were talking about Alliance, right? And you can see them all the way down there towards the 7th position. Series 1 totally bombed out. I can't remember, if I'm not wrong, they didn't compete. because I can't imagine a world where they don't make it in the 8th. Like, that's how badly they did.
And doubling back for a second, if Guild X gets 8th, mathematically no one can catch up to them.
Yeah.
Even if Guild X got 8th and Footballist, or well, I guess Footballist is gone, but Rick's got 2nd, right? They wouldn't have enough points. So all Guild X has to do is get 8th to be the 2nd team to qualify, right?
That's nuts.
Which is a little wild mathematically.
Yeah. So Alliance having made these changes, really, really important. It's really sad though, because like Footballist is disbanded, No Org has disbanded as well. That was the old Smara CIS roster, and they actually did really, really well. It's sad to see that they're not going to be here anymore. Case Hydra didn't compete in the first. They didn't exist in the first, but they've done well enough to get themselves up into 6th. Even Godsent didn't compete in the first, but there they are. So there's a lot of contention here, and a lot of it comes down to the actual format of how the Game Changers circuit works. You can't really even call it a circuit. We're going to talk a little bit about that a bit later on, but let's head over to North America now. And the stakes aren't quite as high just yet. Obviously, they've only had the one series, so the points will be reasonably close. But of course, Cloud9, a rip-roaring lead. You got to keep an eye out on some of these teams. You know, Shopify have just brought on Bonita, for example. There you go, all the way down there. 1994, Tupra, obviously no longer in existence. But, I mean, they only had like 10 points. So this was the perfect time to make those changes. But I think with some of the newer teams coming in, I mean, Dark Monkeys as well, you know, they've been like a big talk team for quite some time. I don't think it's too out of the ordinary that most of your top teams, however, are pretty big organizations.
I think that there is a lot of competition within North America, just in terms of, I mean, C9 White obviously sits at the top. Shopify is pretty obviously 2nd right now, but I don't think that anyone in NA is as immortal as they seem based on how one-sided the first series was, right? And with looking at the point allotment on the right side there, it's still anyone's game. Both series are worth the exact same amount of points. Anyone can end up pretty much anywhere here. Even like a new team like Native Gaming, right, could just come in, have a massive tournament and completely sideswipe one of these positions. The problem is I'm not quite sure how that's going to work in comparison, right? Because again, it's like one of those things where just participating in the first tournament gives you a lot better odds of being like one of those top 2 qualifications. And if we're just doing points, it can get a little bit weird. I think we're still waiting on a lot of format news for NA Game Changers, so we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, thankfully, as we say, you know, for NA, you've still got 2 more series to go through. The next one is like next month, if I'm not wrong. So it's just around the corner.
It's pretty soon. I know signups are either they went live last week, right? I don't know if they're still live, but I know they went live last week.
Yeah. So now I want to talk a little bit about the Game Changer circuit formats, all right? Specifically across some of the regions, because EMEA and North America have very similar formats in that you have an open qualifier into a main event, you get circuit points, and at the end of the 3 series, whichever teams with the most circuit points, they go through. Very, very straightforward with very little wiggle room. And okay, I mean, it's not awful, but when you look at what some of the other regions are doing, and the question is, why are we not doing this? It's so good. Okay, Brazil has 4 qualifiers, and you get points, right? So circuit points, cool. Then based on your points, so you go into series 1, right? And I'm assuming there's going to be a series 2 to follow, but you have your 4 qualifiers into your series 1. Then there's a fight for the top between the 2 teams that win each series. Because obviously only one team can go through. So you have a total of 8 open qualifiers into your 2 series, and then your top 2 teams will battle it out in like Battle Royale style to see who goes through. That's already a better format. Then we look at APAC, and oh my god, APAC, I blew my mind. I wish we had this, because APAC has 4 opens. The 4 opens go into what they call open overtime. So you accumulate points in the 4 opens, and the player or the teams would go into the open overtime. You play through open overtime, and certain number of teams, I think it was like 2 or 3, go to the main event, which is elite. Then they have a freaking LCQ. All right, if you didn't make it
Which
through the
is dope.
4 opens and open overtime, you get an LCQ to then go into elite, and the winner of the elite series goes to the LAN. Like, this is a circuit, people. This is an opportunity for real, like, competition, for real underdog stories, for teams to come out of absolutely nowhere. Like we see in actual VCT, we could have that in Game Changers. And it's so disappointing that NA and EMEA stick to this, like, super one-dimensional format.
Yeah, it's very strange to see. I don't know what the viewership is like for Brazil or APAC when it comes to Game Changers, but it's very strange to think of what at least what we think of as the 2 biggest Game Changers regions having like bizarre, like one-dimensional formats compared to the extremely flushed out and professional formats that like Brazil and APAC have made for themselves, right? Like an LCQ is so dope. I don't know why we're not doing that for the other regions, in all honesty. It definitely feels like an oversight.
Yeah. And I think that if we expanded the number of slots, then we could do even more. Like, maybe your argument is, oh, well, there's only 2 slots. Okay, let's take a minute. APAC's doing that with 1 slot. But if you like expanded the number of slots, then you could also increase competition there as well. And then you could like have more of a reason, quote unquote, to create a bigger circuit. I don't know. I love what they're doing with their Game Changers scenes.
We did have a question about open
this.
overtime. If you could cover like that in depth a little bit more, what that entails.
Okay, sure. So you have your 4 open qualifiers, and you gain circuit points in those 4 open qualifiers. And then the top 8 or 10 teams, I'd be lying if I said for sure. I know it is on Wikipedia, but the top teams, based on circuit points, go into this open overtime. They play against each other, and then the top 2 or 3 from there are promoted to the main elite event. And elite is where you go up. Yeah, I wish I would have made a graphic, but I discovered this like a few hours before we went live. My mind blew.
Moments before the show. Sure. And honestly, we got to move on here too, because we're like, we got a lot of VCT to talk about as well.
Yeah, but women, am I right?
I mean, fair enough. You can't argue with that.
All right, so this is really exciting for Game Changers for a lot of different reasons, and I really hope that we can kind of follow in some of those formats. But for now, we slog through, and we look forward to the LAN. Of course, we'll be talking about NA's Series 2 once that wraps up, and we'll get to discuss how those teams do. And obviously, EMEA will be happening fairly soon as well, so there will be lots more women to talk about. But for the moment, let's head over to North American VCT. We're in playoffs, baby. This, I can see you can't wait to talk about this, Paul. Tell me, what are you feeling?
I mean, we're not. I mean, there's so much. I'm feeling so much, Sam. I'm feeling so much. I mean, just talking about the teams that aren't here. First off, right? Like C9, Sentinels, both gone. The best 2 teams throughout 2021, not even present in playoffs here. The Guard, our number 1 team from NA in stage 1, not around for playoffs. And then, you know, TSM as well. I think they were showing a lot of improvement, and for them to not be here is, I don't know if surprising is the right word, but it just goes to show how competitive NA is right now.
Yeah. I mean, there was a long while that NA was kind of like reasonably predictable, not terribly, but just like reasonably. You knew who was going to be on top, you knew who was kind of middling, and you knew who was going to bomb out. You didn't know the exact order, but you had like an idea of more or less. It was
Sentinels and who else is good this tournament. Right?
Pretty much.
Like now it feels like every single turn, even Optic are having like competition. Optic did not get through the group stage flawlessly, right? They dropped a series to EG. They dropped maps to a couple of different teams. So it is fascinating watching North America right now. It's impossible to predict any match. Like I've given up at this point on predictions. Every week Mike asks like, who do we have this week? And I go, well, these seem like the somewhat obvious favorites, but anybody could win. And then anybody does win. Last week,
Yeah.
I said it on show, Sam. I said it on show that it was going to be the one time where I like had faith in EG, because of course I did, because they've been looking amazing, and this would be the 1 week they lost, and it was the 1 week they lost. The 1 week I pred EG is the 1 week that they end up losing to FaZe, who admittedly look way better than I expected FaZe to, right? I actually think this 100 Thieves versus FaZe game is going to be super weird, first off, but also really cool to watch, with FaZe like fully shifting into this like style that we have always known them to play, but now like Baby Bay is looking more comfortable, more supportive than he ever has. And then 100 Thieves are just becoming an enigma of sorts. They're very one-sided in all their series, Sam. So it's been 2-0s or 0-2s every single time.
What I find so exciting, and I kind of mentioned this a few weeks back as well, but like Ghost Gaming, to me, they're like the most exciting part of this, because like when have they ever achieved anything close to this level of success? And I suppose EG in the same token, like, I mean, this is huge for these two teams, and I'm actually heartbroken that they wind up playing each other right off the bat. But thankfully there is, of course, a double elimination bracket, so there is an opportunity going forward to kind of redeem themselves, keep themselves alive in it. But there's so many like exciting moments happening at the moment, and I'm really glad to see how many teams are doing well. It does actually kind of make you wonder though, so how are like LCQ potential looking for the teams that haven't made playoffs? Like there are so many permutations right now. My head hurts thinking about it.
Yeah, LCQ for NA is a little bit wild. But I do want to actually touch on that Ghost Gaming EG match a little bit too, because I think this is like the match with like the most somewhat similar storylines, right? Not just like with the teams where they're like two teams where it's like, oh, they've always been somewhat good to varying degrees, obviously. But like they've never looked this good throughout any iteration. Then you also have like somewhat similar storylines between like Calm and a Proto, right? Where it's like two players who have played at the very top of NA, but then had like some team issues. They got dropped from good rosters because of unfortunate circumstance, and now they're finally slotting back into another top team. You've got similar storylines between like Koala Noob and like Boostio in theory, where it's like two players who have popped off in like tier 2 tournaments throughout 2021, but never like competed at the top and looked this good, like on par with guys like, well, maybe not on par with guys like Ye, but looking competitive against them, if nothing else, right? Like it's such an interesting matchup storyline wise.
Yeah. So I'm going to do that thing that you love so much. How do you think, we're not going to go through every single match, I think, but who do you have kind of in your top 4 for this?
Top 4. I have to put Optic there.
Okay.
Just because even though they stumbled against EG, Optic still look really good. And I think Optic are still one of the best teams at pivoting mid-match. I think they're still one of the best teams at reading their opponent during a game and figuring out a way to beat them. Outside of that, man, I mean, it really feels like anybody's game. I want to put XSET up there because I feel like XSET have just a ton of firepower, but I also feel like XSET have one of the more predictable and regiment. Everybody's going to be very well prepped for their XSET matches, right? So I think it comes down to less of can XSET win dynamically and more does the other team's prep beat XSET, right? Because we saw, I think it was when they played against, what was it, 100 Thieves? Yeah, 100 Thieves read them like an absolute book, right? Like green eggs and ham kind of reading them. That match wasn't even particularly close considering XSET. I'm still going to put XSET in the top 4, though. And then I'm actually... The next 2 spots, honestly, could go to anybody that isn't NRG, probably. NRG definitely feels like the outlier here. They haven't convinced me as much as the rest of these teams. I'm going to give it to EG just because I'm turning into an EG fanboy. And I think my other team, I'm actually going to go with 100 Thieves. No, I don't want to go with 100 Thieves. I don't know. I don't know about that 4th spot. That 4th spot's rough. I think
Yeah, I mean-
literally anyone can get it. 100 Thieves have had super good prep. FaZe is looking actually surprisingly good. I wouldn't be surprised if FaZe does better than a lot of people think here in this tournament. LG is obviously a team with a lot of talent. They've been a little bit up and down as they've been having some org issues. And then Ghost Gaming, we touched on. They're looking great.
Yeah. I was kind of with you for a lot of that. I feel like Optic, they're a team that I just can't discount. As much as they've had kind of some rough patches, they're just so good. And for a long time, that was how I felt about Sentinels. So hopefully, the Optics have still got some time. They've got some time before they hit that decline. So hopefully that doesn't happen too soon. I have a lot of faith in, I have a lot of faith in 100 Thieves staff. I think that with the, time to really prep and focus on the playoffs teams. I mean, you spoke about it, like XZ are a team that can be really well prepared for. And with the brains behind that 100 Thieves roster, I think that there's a really good chance here that they come out swinging. So I'm going to have them in my top 4. I'm also a little bit of an EG fangirl at this point. But I think we all kind of are, especially because of Calm. So, it is what it is. 4th spot,
Right? It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's competitive.
And
it's
this is
close.
gonna sound odd. It's gonna sound odd, but to me, I kind of swing between like XZ and Luminosity of all teams. I couldn't tell you why.
4th. Interesting. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's fair to a degree. I think LG and XZ are both teams that are obviously capable of the best in NA, right? Mechanically, if nothing else. I think LG has looked a little bit inconsistent, and I think XZ they've got their game plan and they stick to it, right? Have Zekin and Cryo kill everything and then we win the game. It's fine.
Not the best plan. See a few plot holes there.
If the other team's dead, they can't win.
Do you know what? Let's just hope XZ have plot hole armor. We'll see if that works out for them. Right, let's head on over to EMEA. Oh,
also
man.
very spicy.
Dude, Group B. We had no idea how that one was going to shake up. We like sat and we did all of the permutations, like who needs to win, who needs to lose, and by how many points. It was like that meme of the dude at the chalkboard, trying to figure out like how does this work. And even when it got announced, I actually I was watching the Valorant regional leagues, and somebody was in the chat going, "So this work now because there's a 3-way tie," and it's actually a little different. I believe that NA goes map differential first. I could be wrong on that
I'm pretty sure we do head-to-head first.
Do you also do head-to-head first? Okay, because EMEA does that as well. And a lot of people were like totally confused. And so Mech beat both BBL and Big, and therefore they win in the head-to-head. And then obviously if it went into like a rock, paper, scissors thing where like everybody beat everybody.
You mean Navi. Yeah.
Sorry, Navi, yeah. And if it went into a rock, paper, scissors thing, where it was like everybody beat everybody, then you kind of go into like map differential and stuff.
Right.
But it was the head-to-head, and by the grace of God, Mech do manage to come out on top. They get themselves that spot in playoffs. And to be quite frank, I mean, this is more or less what I thought playoffs was going to look like. Maybe a G2 in place of like, I don't know, somebody.
Ascend,
but
right? Like
maybe, yeah.
Like we knew Group A there was going to be one really good team one really good team. I hesitate to say that about G2 these days. But one top tier org that got cut, right? There were 4 in there and there were only 3 spots. It had to be somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
And it just turns out this time it was the somebody that lost to OG London. So, I definitely think there isn't anybody in EMEA where I'm like, God, I wish they made playoffs. There's nobody. Sure. I don't feel shafted by despite the fact that it's only like 3 teams from each group and not 4 like NA. I don't feel bad about this. This feels like the top talent 100%.
Makes a ton of sense. I will say that so there were those rumors going around that like G2 were gonna leave the Valorant scene, which is like hilarious. The guy that posted that is like infamous for leaking roster moves based on like, oh, this player scrimmed with that team, so now it leaks that player is going to that team. Like really dumb stuff like that.
Definitely doesn't hit the mark as often as Valor Leaks does.
Not even close, man.
No.
And then, so George Geeds was like, what? And he went and he did a little bit of investigating. And then there was a rumor going around that G2 were going to pick up the mech roster. So not leave Valorant, but like pick up a whole new roster.
I would be interested in.
But apparently that was also disproven. So we've got like some serious rumor mill stuff happening. I think what it's really going to boil down to is G2 are going to make some changes. And like, duh. They kind of need to at this point. Yeah. Their performance in the last one was just not up to standard. So changes need to happen.
Yep.
Yeah. But I'm really excited for the... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, but like going back to this like bracket for playoffs, I got to ask you, Sam, as our resident EMEA champion here, who that isn't Fnatic do you really have your eye on?
It's got to be FPX. It's got to be FPX. I mean,
even after
what
they
happened
lost to Ascend?
You know what? Shit happens, man. You know, it does. It really do be like that sometimes. But I mean, you got to bear in mind, you know, how well they did in the last series. And obviously they couldn't travel, so they didn't get that chance to prove themselves. And I don't know. There's something about FPX, and I've been a FPX fangirl since like the dawn of time, ever since they came into Valorant. But they've been looking really good. Yeah, okay, they hit a bit of a speed bump. Who hasn't from time to time? But for the most part, they're still looking really good. I suppose the other strong contender for me would be Liquid. Yeah, that would be my two. What about you?
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I think you actually hit the nail on the head. I maybe moved over to the Ascend camp after seeing the game versus FPX. I was able to catch that game, and I really feel like they had outside of Breeze, which was a weird comp from them, and they went up against an even weirder comp with like the Yoru Fade. I think they maybe got a bit caught off guard there, but Ascend definitely looked really good on those other two maps. Pretty dominant, honestly. So I think I would maybe sub out FPX for Ascend, but otherwise, yeah, absolutely. Fnatic, obviously, looking like the best team maybe in the world right now, honestly, which is hard for me to say as an NA fan, but I gotta give credit where it's due, man. Fnatic just look untouchable.
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to Mech as well, and I really hope that they do well. But given their performance in the group stages, I'm not terribly confident, so that's a bit sad. But yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. Obviously, guys, playoffs action unfolds this weekend, which is really, really exciting. So do make sure to check in on to that one. There was something that we were going to talk about at the end of this, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, it was about circuit points. Yeah, no, we're going to talk about circuit points. Sure. Yeah, so trying to figure out who could potentially... I know that 3 teams are already confirmed for LCQ for EMEA, which are BBL, Navi, and OG London United, which makes a ton of sense. But aside from that, I mean, things look reasonably close in EMEA compared to, like, all the other regions. I don't know if Cody, if you could get that up for us. But in the meantime, so G2... interestingly enough, despite this most recent performance, are still in the lead with 305 points. And of course, FPX sitting in second with 265. So they should be fine for now to make it to champs. But of course, it is still anybody's game. And then it stays close. Like Liquid is tied with FPX. Fnatic are a little bit lower down, but they're already confirmed because they did so well now, so they're in without a doubt. And then you've got Guild, and then Mech, and then Ascend. So obviously all of the teams that have just competed now, basically, yeah, all of the teams that have just made playoffs, they're still safe, or they still need to kind of like be sorted because they need to get their points for this Masters event. But yeah, we've got 3 confirmed so far. Yeah, it's looking pretty scrappy. There's only 5 more spots.
And I mean, based on that, everybody above them is making LCQ, right? The only reason that the other teams aren't confirmed is because they might just qualify for champions if they win stuff, right?
If they win stuff.
That's the only way that this wouldn't work, right? So it seems like we know all of the teams that could potentially be in LCQ. London's squeaking in there, dude. Just barely. Just barely. They got a lot to work on though if they want to be competitive for that.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously with SMB having dropped out and not being able to compete in this last season. Obviously, they're completely off the board. And even Focus have overtaken them, and Focus didn't compete in the first one, which is pretty hectic. So I mean, EMEA is more or less shaped up. We can take a look over on NA now. You just click on the NA tab, and this is way wilder.
This one's weird.
What is going on here?
So basically, Sentinels only has 45 points, right? So Ghost Gaming can absolutely demolish Sentinels' hopes, depending on how well Ghost Gaming does. Ghost Gaming needs, it seems, and so they already have a guaranteed 35 based on their placement. They would need to get 4th or higher, and then Sentinels are just done. Actually, the tie, there might be a tie with them, and we also have like 3 teams tied right there with EG, Sentinels, FaZe Clan, right? So Ghost Gaming can guarantee themselves a qualification into the LCQ at the very least if they get 4th or higher. Evil Geniuses, I think they need just more points than they currently have. Yeah, EG would need to get at least 6th, right? And FaZe Clan would need to get at least, it seems like they have 45, they got 30. Yeah, actually, they would both need at least 6, right? They both at least need to get 6th. If those 2 teams get 6th and Ghost Gaming gets 4th, Sentinels does not make LCQ.
That's nutty when you think about it. There is a world where Sentinels does not make LCQ, and even if they do make LCQ, making Master champs.
It's hard too, right? Because it's hard to actually be like, oh, Sentinels falling apart when they just had some really unfortunate stuff toward the back half of this stage, right? They had the 1 week where they had 2 subs in. Even after that week, Sick, unfortunately, due to things beyond his control, wasn't able to play. They had to sub Raucus in, which is not what Sentinels has been working on these past 5 months, right? I know they were glad to have Raucus on the team, but that's not where they wanted him. It's such a rough spot for Sentinels right now.
Yeah. Heart goes out to them, no doubt. And I just think back to Fnatic at the last Masters event as well, where they had to play with 2 subs. I mean, we've seen it with version 1 last year as well. The moment that you're in these really high pressure situations and suddenly you have to sub someone out, it can completely demolish everything. So, I mean, unfortunately for version 1, that kind of led to their downfall. For Fnatic, it actually led to bigger and better things. So we'll see how this impacts Sentinels going forward. Hopefully they do make LCQ for what I would imagine really is their last chance at this point, given their performance over the last few months. Now, we are getting close to the end of our show. We've mostly stuck to time, which is really impressive given how much we had to talk about. We actually, we were talking about it earlier. We were just well, there's only 2 of us, so let's cram some content in there. And it worked out. So
what we're getting from this is it's all Mike's fault when we go over. All Mike's fault.
Yeah, it really is Mike's fault. God.
100%.
He's really good at tangents, though. He's the tangent master, she says, on a tangent. Let's head over onto the NSG stuff because, well, as we've been mentioning every week, there is a lot happening with NSG. So we've just had the Georgetown LAN, and again, Paul, I can see you're really excited about this. So why don't you take this one away?
Let's go, TAMU! Sorry, I have to shout out my collegiate boys, right? TAMU,
right, shout out.
Really phenomenal team in collegiate Valorant as well. They're pretty consistently, I would say, top 5. But that just goes to show, there was some real competition at this Georgetown LAN too, right? BBG Academy, who are basically the BBG main team at this point. Let's all be honest about that. Sicko's Money Crew had a lot of really good tier 1 players. There were some great tier 2 pug teams between Scum Gang and We Live Here, right? So I'm just so happy to see a collegiate full 5-player squad roll through this tournament, only dropping 1 map in the very grand finals of it. It just goes to show, stop sleeping on collegiate. TAMU's top 5, by the way. 5. I would not put them above 5th place, as much as I love the TAMU guys. Shout out to my boy Aggro. So stop sleeping on collegiate Valorant, please and thank you.
I know like EMEA doesn't have a collegiate scene per se, but they are like some university teams, like UCAM, for example. They competed in the VRL. I think it was VRL. No, it was the Icebox thing like last year sometime. Spanish university. So there is some really, really good talent in the university scenes, and I think that like people overlook them because like, oh well, they're students or whatever. Maybe they can't dedicate the time. Or...
Can't sleep on them, man. I mean, if you've been paying attention to like the tier 2 NA scene, Lenny time, Ferbs is a collegiate player, right? Everybody remembers Truo. Truo got his start on a collegiate team, right? Stop sleeping on collegiate. I wouldn't even some of the guys from collegiate too that like go and pop off. I wouldn't even necessarily say they're like the best of like the cream of the crop collegiate a lot of the time. Like what was it? Was it Zero Marksman Silver, right? They were like a collegiate team and they like turned into Zero Marksman Silver for a while and did really well in tier 2 scene. I don't know if they're still competing, but like I wouldn't even necessarily have them top 5, and they were taking it to some tier 2 teams. So like collegiate good. Anyways,
there's a lot of good stuff there. Watch collegiate Valorant, guys.
When it comes
head
back,
over to some more
because it's summer now.
Yeah, because apparently esports is a winter sport. Anyway. Sorry, I had to. Okay, online number 10 for NSG. So we had the LAN. We've also got the online happening, and I believe that this is wrapping up tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because we still got the semis to go through, and then the finals, but there will be more action, obviously, tonight as well.
Actually, I think it wrap... Wait, I could be wrong.
Am I wrong?
No, it does wrap up tonight. Yeah. Semis and finals are tonight.
Okay, because I saw that like June 13th to 16th. And I seem to remember Cody saying tonight, and I was like, wait, did I hear that wrong? Okay, so it is tonight. It's wrapping up tonight on this channel.
In 4 hours.
So guys, do come and check it out. Yeah, in 4 hours. And as you can see, there are some excellent teams. We mentioned BBG Academy, Virtuoso's up there. They've been around for quite some time. Scum Gang, came like...
No, Scum Gang should be replaced by YFP. That's just a graphic issue. That's just a graphic issue. Scum Gang was a bit of a leftover from Georgetown LAN. It's okay, though. YFP is up there.
Cody out here determined to make me look like a knob, I swear. Yeah, okay, so YFP. And then, of course, Oxygen Academy. Also,
another one, right? Oxygen and BBG Academy fight is literally just like, we're the actual A team, but we get called Academy because we have young players and nobody wants to pay our salary. That's just a fight of two teams like that.
What do you think, Paul? Who's going to win this one?
I mean, it's hard for me not to root or vote for Oxygen Academy. I think Redux is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think anyone in that top 4 could take it away. Those are all four very respectable teams. I would not be surprised if anybody won that. Virtuoso has maybe been struggling toward the like top end of tier 2 recently. They do well like every single tournament, and then they get to like quarterfinals and above and kind of like peter out against someone I think they shouldn't. So I'd also like to see Virtuoso put up a good fight this week. But honestly, any of those 4 teams can take it.
All right, well, let's take a little squiz at the leaderboard as it stands currently. Zero Marksman Black. Wow, just so far ahead of the curve at the moment.
I think they've won, 2 LANs, right? Which gives them just an absurd amount of points.
Is there anything here that like stands out to you as like really surprising, or like, a team that maybe should have been, or?
Nah. I mean, this all makes sense based on, because keep in mind, like the leaderboards is based on consistency more than anything else, right? Consistency in participation, consistency in performance. So these are these teams toward the top are the ones that have been showing up the most and winning the most, other than Xset, who showed up for like 1 LAN at the very beginning and won it. But I'm not sure if we're going to see them again. I think they have more important things on their mind for now at the very least. But otherwise, this leaderboard makes total sense.
And honestly, I will never pass up an opportunity to talk about the NYFU over there in 4th place. What a name. I'm never going to get over that one. So there you go. That's how that's shaping up. But of course, we've got a few more LANs coming up. So obviously, Georgetown has just wrapped up. And we've had a couple of those happen already as well. So in North Brunswick, we had the Magic School Bus taking that one. Let's see, over in Chicago, we had Zero Marksman Black. Down in Georgetown, Texas A&M. Is that the team? There you go.
Yeah, Texas
over in-
A&M University, aka.
Oh, okay,
TAMU.
gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Oh,
They
and now
get
it's just gone.
don't call them TMAU. They get mad about that.
Really?
TAMU. Yeah, you gotta say
Really?
TAMU. It's a school. It's a thing about the school, right? I don't know. It's TAMU.
Fair enough, I guess. And obviously, Zero Marksman Black also having one over in Fullerton. So the next one is going to be over in Bakersfield. We've also got an online in Denver coming up. And then, of course, there'll be the grand finals in Philadelphia. So a lot of really, really awesome Valorant action. Thank you, Nerd Street, for making this possible, helping keep the Tier 2 scene alive. NSG EMEA win. I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. And that wraps up our show. That's everything. Wow. We got through a lot of information and we did it in time, Paul. Go us. Thanks everybody for, coming in, tuning in, checking out the show. Do follow all of our socials. Follow Nerd Street Gamers. Follow the Twitch channel so that you can catch all of the events. Also to follow the show. We're here every Wednesday, 1 p.m. EST, whatever that is in your time zone. Go figure it out. Time zones are hard. Thank you guys for tuning in. Quick note, we will not have episodes for the next 2 weeks. Our producer is abandoning us. We have some serious trauma about that. We're going to take the next 2 weeks to get through that. And when we come back on the 6th of July, mark it on your calendars, press 4 returns. We'll tell you all about how we got through our trauma. Thank you once again, everybody, for hanging out. And we'll see you next time. Have a good night.